This is the best version of not that one, or that one. No, definitely not that one. Quan Chi is a pretty polarizing character. He has a bunch of die-hard fans who love him and swear by him, and a bunch of people, some of them very famous, who loathe this character with a passion. And I'm sitting here thinking, if only they knew about this version of Quan Chi. They have no idea what they're missing. And if you do know this version and still don't jive with him at all, you just don't get the character, man. Let's see if we can fix that, shall we? Dearly beloved, we be gathered here today to give credit and thanks to one of the best interpretations of a Mortal Kombat character ever put on screen. A guy that went from this...
Well, thank you for having me. Hello, everyone.
...to this.
Look at me!
When given the task of adapting not one, but two sorcerers from the games into a TV show without having them be redundant to one another, the obvious first question the writers needed to ask themselves is, who is Quan Chi? What is he? We know who Shang Tsung is, but Quan Chi was a relatively new character at the time, only having appeared in Mortal Kombat mythologies in Mortal Kombat 4 a year prior. And what little could be gleaned from those interpretations, the writers amped up to 11 and developed with more gusto and creativity than most of the games combined. Because they looked at him and said, okay, he's a weirdo painted white, he wears outlandish extravagant clothing, he's from the Netherrealm, he makes deals with and tricks people, he has female slaves. Cool, so he's a mobster, a pimp, a black market trader, and a decadent aristocrat from hell. We'll be going through each of those, don't you worry about that. And then the last puzzle piece was finding an actor to bring all of that to life, and Adoni Maropis was the only man for the job. It's been said before, but this man was born to play this role. This was a 1 in a billion cosmic chance for this role to find this actor.
Ah, the dust of the Netherrealm, from the evil of countless souls.
And it's the genius of adaptations, because you can study an original work, find its core elements, see what else you have to work with, and then creatively develop all those things far beyond what the source material did. I don't need to tell you it's usually the other way around, especially in this day and age of hack writing, propaganda-infused adaptations, and regurgitated sequels and reboots. So this is the rare exception, like that time when a director was tasked with adapting a fucking theme park ride into a feature-length film and managed to pull a chef's dish out of a microwave, kickstarting one of the most successful franchises in recent memory out of it. And just like Pirates of the Caribbean had Johnny Depp, Mortal Kombat Conquest has Quan Chi, along with a couple other top-tier performances. Conquest Quan Chi is the smug, whimsical, self-satisfied foil to Shang Tsung's self-serious renegade emo edgelord syndrome. Shang is a self-styled sorcerer prodigy on the run, while Quan has the air of a decadent infernal aristocrat. He's exuberant, flamboyant, self-assured, charismatic, and completely unhinged. Rather than leave him a drab one-note villain, Adoni infuses this character with so much more life and gusto. No line is simply spoken, but truly acted, halfway between a TV show and a play. He doesn't simply move, he floats, he carries himself effortlessly. Most importantly, every word, gesture, mannerism, and facial expression are those of an actor who's having so much damn fun. And that fun is infectious.
Kung Lao's two warriors. You may need a lesson soon to remind you of what real fear is. I choose to live in my domain. I was not banished there. Now the veil drops and chaos begins. Violence.
Speaking of differences between the two sorcerers, although both of them eventually perfect their malevolent plans in a sporting attempt to one-up one another, at the very beginning, Quan's plans are much more refined than Shang's. Because Shang plots things like kidnap her and forcefully age them, and there's so much brute force, whereas Quan Chi lets the heroes do his work for him. In his introductory episode, he simply awakens their darker impulses, the Jungian shadow, and waits for them to lie, cheat, steal, and murder their way into an early grave, that Quan may then plunder to reap their souls. And were it not for the direct intervention of Raiden, who, in that show, only really shows up and takes things seriously when absolutely necessary, the sorcerer would have actually succeeded. easily. So Conquest Quan is presented as not only extremely competent, but also extremely enjoyable to watch. And this is what Conquest does best with characters like Quan, Raiden, and Shao. Instead of raving about the custom spoilers it put on its cars or repping 100 decals, it actually takes those cars to the racetrack and shows what they can do. Mortal Kombat exists on a very narrow part of a spectrum between interdimensional drama and stylized camp, and it's very easy to miss the mark and sway too far in one direction or the other. This is one of the strengths of this show because it superimposes over-the-top characters over interesting, believable plot lines and characterization. And Adoni's Quan Chi is almost like the mascot of the show in this sense, because he manages to retain both the almost cartoony, surreal depiction of the character while also successfully acting that out in a relatively grounded world opposite grounded, straight-talking characters. Comparisons between this version of Quan and the Joker, especially the classic dastardly animated series version, are somewhat inevitable, and not just because of the face paint, because in both cases you have fairly serious characters in a pretty hostile world in which you then wrench this radically different character who effortlessly dances through it with a much lighter, more whimsical, ludically charged demeanor. But whereas the Joker is in love with the joke, Quan Chi is in love with the scheme, the deception, the trick, the foil. He doesn't model his whole shtick around the punchline, but around machinations and subterfuge. He's an opportunist through and through, always looking for ways to increase his power and influence. But he's also not above allying with the good guys temporarily if it furthers his goals. Perhaps the best example of everything I just laid out is the first meeting between Quan Chi and Shang Tsung, an episode that dude, shrink the damn font. I get you want to credit these people, but not on 2/3 of the fucking screen. This is an episode that, with the benefit of hindsight, probably inspired the Deadly Alliance game, since the former came out way before the latter. In it, the disgraced Shang Tsung, imprisoned in Shao Kahn's cobalt mines, summons Quan Chi to propose an alliance. Naturally, the first thing they do is trade insults and measure dicks.
So, this is the home of the great Shang Tsung.
Without question. Nothing compared to yours. How is life among the dead?
Free.
They ask you how you are, and you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine.
Is this why you sent word to me? To spar. To play games with my slave.
I like how this whole conversation has this courtroom machinations feel, like two courtroom sorcerers from rival houses engaging in a game of wits, shaking one pair of hands while preparing knives behind their backs with the other.
I'm surprised you came willingly.
Curiosity prevailed.
What I have in mind for Kung Lao will require both our powers to create. And even then, the energy drain will be intense.
Challenging.
He's so goddamn smooth. This man speaks like he's trying to mask tiny micro-orgasms that are constantly happening to him. So yeah, he's a smooth operator until, of course, he gets comically angry and loses his shit, and you're sitting there gobbling popcorn watching him with glee. He's the guy that's a little slimy and disingenuous that no one trusts, but that everyone's kinda happy to see at a social gathering because he's charismatic, he's verbose, he smiles all the time and gets people talking to one another. And it's the perfect counterpoint to Shang. This version of Shang is super serious, has a short temper, and looks like he listens to Devil May Cry music, while Quan is this sly fox that treats everything with a bit of grace and melody. It seems like he listens to a bit of Wagner and Debussy on his off days. But more importantly, Shang Tsung is obsessed with destroying the great Kung Lao, his arch nemesis, while Quan doesn't give much of a fuck about Kung Lao or anyone's soul, but he does care about learning how to consume souls.
Surprise, motherfucker!
Which Shang can teach. And this informs the dynamic between the two. Desperation and need versus curiosity and desire. And this gives Quan the upper hand as he elegantly toys around with Shang. First, he says that Kung Lao's
Death
death
means little to me.
But then, when all is said and done, this happens.
Do we have a deal?
Yes. Under one condition. When he dies, Kung Lao's soul is mine. This is non-negotiable.
You motherfucker. You know your boy been cooking that from the get-go. Hit him right where it hurts. In terms of verbal sparring, Quan Chi maintained the edge the entire conversation. And Shang agrees to this, but what I like about it is that they both know Shang's gonna try and cheat his way out of it, so this whole thing is one big game of bullshit and backstabbing to see who cracks first. And in spite of anything that appearances might suggest, Quan was actually a fair player and held up his end of the bargain. It was Shang Tsung who continually jerked Quan Chi around around and tried to weasel his way out of the deal, leaving Quan with no choice but to foil the plan and save Kung Lao's life. An interesting turn of events to be sure. Whereas in the games, Quan Chi is physically incapable of performing any act of good even indirectly, in the show, despite his oft malevolent intentions, he's much more of a neutral player, which makes him more interesting because he could swing any one way at any one point. Another, I'd say, crucial difference between show and game Quan is fun. Adoni's Quan is just so much fucking fun. He's having a blast and his enthusiasm is infectious. And I consider this an important trait because you're playing the fucking devil. Not literally the Christian devil, mind you, but it's that type of a role that this character is supposed to fill out, more or less. A trickster, a demon, a Faustian archetype. It's like that quote goes, the devil doesn't come at you with a red cape and horns, but with everything you've ever wished for. Despite his freaky appearance, Quan Chi needs to be alluring, inviting, charismatic, and playful. In one word, he needs to be fun. And Adoni delivers exactly that. And no offense to the fans of the video game version, but by comparison, video game Quan is just so fucking drab he puts me to sleep. The reserved, deep-voiced Coolio act, with the occasional Hugo Weaving laugh, is definitely a valid, strong approach, but I don't buy that anyone would want anything to do with this guy. He's so one-note, one-dimensionally despicable that there really isn't much to make you reconsider your initial impression of him or convince you to make a deal with him, or at least give you a good laugh and make you a fan. I'd say he came into his own a little bit in MKX. Some of his intro banter is significantly more playful and witty than his part in either of the story modes, and don't get me started on MK12 Quan. Generic is a compliment. And the more I think of it, the more Conquest Quan seems surprisingly forthright. He forged straightforward alliances with Shang Tsung and Shao Kahn and was going to honor them both if they didn't turn sour because of unfortunate circumstances that were beyond his control, whereas video game Quan always plans to betray every single ally from the start. So out of the two main interpretations, he's the least conniving, ironically. And since we're comparing strengths and weaknesses, I should note that video game Quan seems to have more control over souls and soul energy and seems overall more powerful, yet he still technically was never shown to steal and absorb a soul. Never had a move like that, never did it in a cutscene, so this soul-stealing handicap seems by all accounts to be consistent in both the show and the games. But yeah, because of this handicap, Shou Quan, more so than other versions, is more of a black market trader. Since he can't absorb souls, he auctions them off to rulers and conquerors. Anyway, take a look at this scene out of context. Speaking of weaknesses, let's get to the core of this Quan's less flattering but still very much enjoyable to watch side. For Conquest, Quan Chi at his core is not a sorcerer, he's not even a devil or a soul auctioneer, no. What he is...
I'll please you as I always do.
That is so much better. Now I know you mean it.
...is a pimp. That is right, Quan Chi is Andrew Tate from hell. There's a bit of pimp syndrome going on in Conquest as a whole, from Quan Chi to Shang Tsung to Shao Kahn to the Koreans, the main adversary of the season being an all-female army come to conquer everything, almost like the toxic feminine pushing back against the toxic masculine, to Quan and Shang almost immediately devolving into nagging pimps not 2 seconds into their first meeting.
Get rid of her.
Get rid of yours.
Perhaps I will kill them both.
But Quan Chi is definitely the most overt example, what with him being a lone necromancer who buys or summons, trades for, it's not really made clear, these undead women that he then uses for various tasks like servicing him, seducing victims, offering them to potential powerful allies like Shao Kahn. Because when you break it down and strip away all the exuberant clothing and pomp and powers and clever wordplay, you realize he's just a little guy on his own, stowed up in his lonely fortress in his lonely realm with no one to keep him company but his undead, used and bruised women. And you might think this is somewhere between sad and sickening, but the show actually manages to make it funny.
Still so silent in my presence.
They serve you as I do, Quan Chi.
Like 3 rats from a stinking sewer!
Mika was hurt.
Mika is dead!
To go back to the assassin part, Queen.
If you like.
You and Sion could get your wish for, Pax. There might be a great deal of violence here if I don't get the right answers. Miserable sluts. I should have brought others. Ones who won't fail. I'm sending you back.
No, please! You'll need us, Quan Chi.
I meant back to Kung Lao!
Yes, of course. Give us another chance. Please.
He's your obsession, and obviously the Emperor will compensate you. What do I get? Give me the bottle.
It is lost. Broken in the fight.
Celine.
The new slave.
Better than being the old one.
Continue your report.
Maybe I should whisper to Celine and have her tell you.
You tell me. Now. Dinner. Celine's been at work. You don't approve of my new choice.
No,
But why? The woman has initiative.
she doesn't use her head. I told you.
It's so funny, in fact, that this man developed a cult following for these kinds of scenes, so much so that he, the actor, posts short little skits on his personal YouTube channel of him dressed up as Quan Chi in full face paint, which probably takes a crap ton of time to put on, being silly, getting angry at fake slaves, and having a blast. There's something about this calm, powerful, and otherwise in-control sorcerer devolving into an enraged, bratty little shit when his minions fail him that's really enjoyable to watch and really spoke to people. Anyway, in the show, Quan Chi relies on his slaves a little too much, because for every win they take like 3 L's and fuck up his plans. Being the merciless Netherrealm coot that he is, he doesn't really have a lot of friends or allies. And the thing is, he knows this. That's why he tried to forge an alliance with Shao Kahn, which, sadly for him, Shang Tsung spoiled and got him on the Emperor's bad side. That's kind of the thing about Quan. Despite his impressive power, the direct approach is not really his style. He's not that good at it. So he has to rely on subterfuge to get what he wants. And this is very smartly reflected in his powers and fighting style, particularly in his fight against Shang. I mean, okay, first of all, starting out strong with Quan shooting his signature green skull and Shang mid-air tornado kicking it to pieces. Forget in-depth analysis, that's just dope as fuck. I remember seeing that as a kid and being absolutely transfixed by it. Going from the goofy graphics of MK4 to that, to seeing these characters and moves brought to life and iterated upon was a thing of wonder to behold. Anyway, soon as the fight starts, Quan Chi reaches for his bag of tricks. He uses some light telekinesis, first to break the doors behind Shang Tsung to open and make them sneak attack him, then on himself to rebound after a hit off the wall and Superman his way into Shang's face. But Shang, being an ex-champion of Earthrealm, he has no trouble weathering all that and turning the tide of the battle. And as soon as Quan loses the upper hand, he resorts to more trickery, turning this piece of fabric into a Quan Dao, which is fitting because Quan, get it? Then as soon as Tsung steals it from him, Quan seemingly turns it into a snake. So more so than any other depiction, this Quan Chi is a master of illusion, distorting reality and that which you see. And they also went through the trouble of making sure his general fighting style is extremely unorthodox and stands out from those of other characters in the series, as he does a lot of flailing, helicopter pirouettes, handstand kicking, probably inspired from MK4 Kai, some grappling, some wall and terrain usage, and a lot of motions that look very berserk, but are probably meant to scare more than anything. I'd say Conquest Quan is a bit of him mixed with a bit of the red guy, and a little bit of the mask, and some Joker and Dick Dastardly on top for good measure, which is quite the mouthful, and it takes a lot of hard work to pull off all this stuff, so huge shout out to Adoni for delivering what is probably one of the most underrated interpretations of a character ever. And as if that wasn't badass enough, this man was also born, not developed, born with type 1 diabetes, given a very short life expectancy, and proceeded to shit on that prognosis by being alive and kicking today and living the healthiest, most badass life he possibly could have. He also retains a bit of a cult following and posts actual Quan Chi skits in full makeup on his personal channel, some of which are hilarious. So go give him a like. In fact, what I would like all of us to do is click on this video, watch it, is like 30 seconds, like, leave a comment, no Warlock sent me here, none of that bullshit. Just leave a like, comment something nice, sub if you want to, and leave the man scratching his head as to why this one old video suddenly popped off a little bit. Great prank on the prankster Sorcerer.